While all murderers are scary, there is one type of killer that really sends chills down your spine: the serial killer. People have long been both shocked and amused by psychopaths who keep picking up new victims for no reason. Here are 40 interesting facts about some of history's worst serial killers, from the Outback axe murderer to the Russian noblewoman who killed hundreds of serfs because she was angry about being dumped. The sadistic Russian noblewoman. Daria Nikolayevna Saltikova was born into a Russian noble family with ties to well-known noble families like the Tolstoys, the Pushkins, and the Davidovs. Aside from her tendency to be sad, there was nothing bad about her when she was young or when she was first married. She was known for being religious and giving a lot of money to temples and other religious places. The person who seemed so religious was really a monster. Saltikova was the worst example of how a boyar could treat serfs badly. She is remembered as a sadist who abused and killed hundreds of people, most of whom were women. She lost her husband when she was young and got a huge farm with over 600 serfs from him. That was bad news for the serfs. Their dull and unhappy lives were about to get a lot more interesting by adding something horrible. A few years after she lost her husband, Daria Saltikova met Nikolai Tyuchov, a handsome younger man who was poor. He swept her off her feet. She had an intense relationship with him, which made her feel better after being sad for a while. Saltikova found out that her boyfriend was cheating on her with a younger woman, which was bad news. Even worse, Tyuchov married the other woman in secret. Saltikova's mind broke in some way. She almost killed her cheating lover because she was so angry that her boy toy had betrayed her. Tyuchov and his wife ran away to the country house of his relatives near Moscow, but they quickly left the area to avoid the widow's anger. Because she couldn't physically lash out at the person who had betrayed her, Saltikova took out her anger on her helpless serfs. It hurt Daria Saltikova a lot when her boyfriend picked a younger woman over her. She never got over it. She was so mad at him that she couldn't punish him, so she hit her serfs instead. Over the course of several years, Saltikova's serfs had to live through a horrible nightmare of murder and torture. The widow's fits of rage were unexpected and hard to explain. She could go from being calm to murderous at any time. When she didn't like the work of the servant girls, she first threw sticks and then logs at them. The fighting got worse, and she was soon beating them. Then they tortured them, last but not least, beating them to death. Most of the murderous widow's anger was aimed at women. Out of the hundreds of people she killed, only 3 were men, and they were killed by accident. As a way of getting back at men, she made them watch her beat and kill innocent women. In one case, one of her male serfs lost 3 wives in a row to Saltikova's bad behavior. She had no limits on how mean she was to her female serfs. Her victims ranged in age from babies to old ladies who were already sick and dying. She was most angry with younger female serfs, though, more so the ones who were young and pretty. There was no mercy for Daria Saltikova. She tortured people of all ages, even pregnant women, in a wicked range of ways. Some were whipped with the knout, which is a heavy Russian whip that gets shorter as it goes down. When the thin tip of the knout hit someone, it could cut their skin open like a knife, and when the thicker part hit them hard, it could break their spine. Some of them were left outside naked in Russia's harsh winter to freeze to death. She did the exact opposite sometimes and poured hot water on their bodies. It was obvious that Saltikova was a sadist because she loved hurting her serfs and hearing their screams. For years, everyone knew about the bad things going on at Daria Saltikova's farm, but nothing was done. The people she killed were serfs, and Saltikova and her family had a lot of ties to Russia's royal court. Family members of the victims' complaints were often ignored, and many people who did complain were punished for it. Finally, the families of the victims were able to get a petition before Empress Catherine the Great, who arrested Saltikova. The police kept her in jail while they looked into her case for 6 years. Saltikova was found guilty of killing 38 serfs in 1768. Scholars think she killed at least 100 more, so the real number of deaths may have been much higher. Catherine the Great wasn't sure what to do with Saltikova. The empress needed the backing of the Russian nobility since the death penalty had just been abolished. People eventually locked Saltikova up in public for an hour while a sign read about her crimes. They yelled insults at her the whole time. After that, she was sent to a convent and locked up in the cellar until she died in 1801. The land down under's most notorious serial killer. John Lynch was a pain from the start. He was born in Cavan, Ireland, and was found guilty of stealing property when he was 15 years old. He was sent to Australia as a prisoner of war 2 years later, in 1830. Lynch's ship got to Australia in 1832, and he was sent to the village of Berrima in New South Wales, which is about 75 miles from Sydney. Lynch quickly got tired of working on farms as a prisoner while being locked up, so he ran away and joined a group of bushrangers who were Australian thieves who lived in the Outback and the bush. Lynch and 2 other people were tried in 1835 for killing a man who had given proof against their gang. Lynch admitted to killing the man, but for some reason, the judges found him not guilty and sentenced his friends to death by hanging. That was a bad thing, because Lynch went on to become Australia's most famous serial killer. John Lynch was different from other serial killers because he liked to kill with an axe. Soon after he was found not guilty in 1835, he went on a killing spree. He stole 8 cows from a farm and planned to sell them in Sydney. He met a man on the way who was driving a larger group of horses that were loaded with wheat. The man was with an Aboriginal boy. So Lynch earned their trust, camped with them, and then killed both of them with a hatchet. He then took their goods and continued to Sydney. He met a father and son driving another group on the way back from Sydney. He killed them both with his axe and stole their cows. The next thing Lynch did was settle his debt with the Mulligan family, who owed him £30 for stolen goods he had sold them. He went to their farm, cut them up with his axe, and set their bodies on fire. Then he came over to his victim's farm and made himself at home. John Lynch told the Mulligans' neighbours that he had bought it from the family, who had left town quickly without telling anyone. He did this by assuming the name John Dunleavy. For years, John Lynch, who called himself John Dunleavy, got away with killings. Then, in 1841, a cow herder found the body of a local man who had been beaten to death. The person had been last seen a few days before having dinner with a farmer named John Dunleavy. The cops started to look into it, and Dunleavy's story that he bought his farm from the Mulligans in 1835 started to fall apart. That is, until a bartender spoke up and said that John Dunleavy and John Lynch were the same guy. There was a murder charge against Lynch, and the jury found him guilty in less than an hour. His death sentence came true in 1842 when he was hanged. A prostitute addict. A very few people have ever been as crazy about women as Gary Ridgway was. He became obsessed with prostitutes, but it was the worst kind of obsession, the kind of obsession of a serial killer with his victims. The man known as the Green River Killer was found guilty of killing 48 women and admitted to killing a 5th. An awful lot of them were whores. He finally admitted that he had killed a total of 71 women. Ridgway was born in Salt Lake City, Utah. He grew up in a poor area with parents who fought a lot. He wet the bed until he was 13, and his mother would wash his private parts every time. In his teens, he told doctors that he liked his mother and had fantasies about killing her at the same time. Gary Ridgway's dad often whined about how many whores were in and around the neighborhood. Something was wrong with Ridgway's childhood because he wet the bed in his teens, which made him feel bad, and his mother would wash his private parts all the time. He had trouble reading and writing, and his IQ was in the 80s. Since the 1960s, Ridgway has been a dangerous criminal. He took a 6-year-old boy into the woods and stabbed him in the liver when he was 16 years old. The child lived and said that Ridgway laughed as he left. He joined the Navy after high school and was sent to Vietnam. After getting out of the military, he got a job painting cars, which he did for 30 years. Ridgway loved his family, but he had a hard time staying married. He was married 3 times. He also went to church every week, and many people who knew him called him a pious fanatic. Gary Ridgway really liked hookers. He used to go to hookers a lot before he turned into a killer. He started killing people one by one in the early 1980s. Along King County, Washington's Route 99, Ridgway would pick up whores, teens who had run away, and other women who were weak. When they got to his house, he choked them to death with his bare hands. To change things up, he would sometimes tie them up with a cord or wire. Ridgeway dumped the bodies in remote wooded parts of King County. He then often went back to the bodies to defile them. Prostitutes and teens who ran away from home started going missing along Route 99. This was the first sign that a serial killer was on the loose. When the first 5 bodies were found in the Green River, the press called the person they thought killed them the Green River Killer. In 1987, Gary Ridgway got police's attention when many prostitutes who worked on Washington State Route 99, which he drove to and from work, talked about a suspect who looked a lot like him. Investigators looked closely at Ridgway's work history and found that many of the victims who went missing happened on days when he wasn't working. Even though the police arrested him, he passed a polygraph test and let the police take samples of his hair and spit. Since there wasn't enough proof to jail Ridgway, he was soon back on the hunt. At last, in 2001, a new group of detectives started using computers effectively to look into the Green River Killer. These detectives were children when Ridgway started killing people in a serial way. Also, they could use DNA methods that didn't exist back in the 1980s. Ridgway's hair and saliva samples, which had been kept in a safe place since 1987, were sent for DNA testing and came back with a match that linked him to 4 deaths. He was caught, and as part of a plea deal, he told police where dozens of women who were still missing were. Ridgway was spared the death penalty in return and instead given a life term in prison without the chance of parole. The Hippie Trail Killer. Charles Sobhraj, better known as the Hippie Trail Killer, was French and had Vietnamese and Indian roots. As a child, he moved back and forth between France and Indochina a lot. He started breaking the law early on and started committing small crimes. Sobhraj's first time in jail was for theft when he was 18 years old. He was a manipulative sociopath who became friendly with a wealthy prison volunteer. After he got out, the volunteer exposed him to high society. By getting to know the rich, Sobhraj made more money for himself. He looked for ways to break into the homes of his new upper-class friends and acquaintances when he wasn't scamming them. Sobhraj had to leave France with his girlfriend in 1970 to escape being arrested because of legal problems. They stole from tourists along the way as they went through Eastern Europe with fake papers and ended up in India. Charles Sobhraj ran a car theft and smuggling ring in India until 1973, when he was caught trying to rob a jewelry store. He did get away, though, and ran away to Afghanistan. There, Sobhraj and his girlfriend started ripping off tourists on the Hippie Trail. This was a route between Europe and South Asia that was popular with beatniks and hippies in the 1950s and 1970s. Sobhraj's partner broke up with him and went back to France. He got involved in many illegal activities. One of them was with his brother, but it didn't work out, and his brother is now serving an 18-year prison sentence in Turkey. After that, Sobhraj's crimes got worse, and he started putting the bodies of murdered people all along the Hippie Trail. At least 20 Western tourists are thought to have been killed by him, but many think the real number is much higher. In 1976, Charles Sobhraj finally got caught when he tried to give drugs to a group of French tourists in India, but got the dose wrong. The people he hurt got very sick, but they were still awake enough to know what Sobhraj was trying to do. They were able to beat him and grab him until the police came. His extradition was sought by Thai officials because he was charged with murder in Thailand. If he had been found guilty, he would have likely been put to death. But the Indian government chose to first try him for less serious crimes he did in India. Sobhraj was put in jail after being found guilty of many crimes, but he got away in 1986 by giving drugs to the guards. After a month, he was quickly caught again, which led many to think that he did it on purpose to get extra jail time for escape added to his sentence. Because he got extra time in jail, Sobhraj stayed in an Indian prison until 1997, which was after the 20-year limit for his crimes in Thailand had passed. So, he could not be sent back to Thailand, where he could have been put to death. Although Charles Sobhraj was in jail, he was still able to stay in the public eye and keep his fame. While he was in jail in India, he charged a lot of money to talk to reporters and even more money to sell the rights to make movies in India. India didn't have any Son of Sam rules that stopped criminals from making money off of the fame that came from their crimes, so Sobhraj probably kept the money he made. Sobhraj went back to Paris after getting out of jail in 1997. He lived like a celebrity there and allegedly sold the rights to make movies about him around the world for $15 million. He was free for a short time, but he made a bad decision and went to Nepal in 2003. When the officials found out he was in their country, they arrested him for killing 2 people in Nepal in 1975. The next year, he was found guilty and given a life term. Charles Sobhraj is still locked up in a Nepalese jail as of the middle of 2020. The aristocratic murderess. Some people called Countess Elizabeth Bathory de Exend the Blood Countess. She owned huge lands in what are now Hungary, Slovakia, and Romania. Between 1585 and 1609, she abused and killed hundreds of young women, setting the Guinness Book of World Records for most murders by a woman. She was likely the cruelest serial killer woman in history. She was born into the famous Bathory family, which ruled Transylvania as if it were its own separate principality within the Kingdom of Hungary. The future countess grew up in a wealthy and privileged family and had the best teachers who taught her everything she knew. She was 12 years old when she was engaged to a famous Hungarian nobleman. Soon after that, things started to go wrong. A commoner gave birth to Elizabeth Bathory a year after they were engaged. The rich man she was going to marry had her boyfriend castrated, then cut up and fed to the dogs. Elizabeth had a daughter who wasn't hers, and she kept her a secret. She married the man she was engaged to in 1575, but she cheated on him the whole time they were married. It was easier for her to do because her husband was away on military missions for long periods of time. She became interested in being cruel and, around 1585, started beating and killing young girls. She began with servants in her castle and then moved on to serf girls from the nearby towns of poor people. She eventually killed girls of local noble families who were sent to her castle by their families to learn how to behave like aristocrats. Elizabeth Bathory was the most horrible and cruel person ever. Police say they saw her pierce her victims' lips with needles, burn them with red-hot irons, bite their breasts and faces, and cut them with knives. Some of the people she killed were beaten to death, and others were left to die of hunger. In the winter, Countess Bathory liked to send her servant girls out into the snow and pour water over them. She then watched as the girls changed into human icicles. During the summer, she would often put honey on her victims and then watch as ants, bees, and other bugs tortured them. She bathed in and drank her victims' blood because she thought it would keep her young. The exact number of people Countess Bathory killed is unknown, but some figures put the number as high as 650. Eventually, word spread about what was going on at her house, and the Hungarian government looked into it. The cruel countess and 4 of her helpers were caught in December 1610. Bathory's helpers were put on trial, and 3 of them were found guilty of murder and other crimes and put to death. However, Elizabeth was linked, so she got away with it. The government thought that putting someone from a well-known family like her on trial and putting them to death would be too public and bring shame on the elite. She was locked up in Kastis Castle in Slovakia until she died of natural causes in 1614. The Black Arts Bandit. Peter Niers was a German criminal in the Middle Ages. He was a highwayman, used black magic, and was one of the most prolific serial killers in history. Niers admitted to killing 544 people and cutting the babies out of the wombs of 24 pregnant women over the course of 15 years after he was caught. The fetuses were used in black magic practices and then eaten in acts of cannibalism. Niers' first job as a thief was as a highwayman in Alsace, which is now France. His group of thieves finally grew to include about 24 cutthroats. He was also a key figure in a loose network of criminal and highwayman gangs that sometimes worked together to carry out big jobs that needed a lot of men. Niers did illegal things in a lot of places like Western France, the Rhineland, and Bavaria in southern Germany. Peter Niers stood out from other thieves because he was so evil and wanted to kill people for no reason. Taking money from people or even killing them wasn't enough for him. Instead, Niers liked hurting people who were victim to his control and killing them in a wide range of creatively evil ways. He was caught in 1577 and, while being tortured, admitted to killing 75 people over the previous 11 years, but he was able to get away before he was supposed to be executed. Niers went back to committing crimes, and this time he was even more cruel and hungry for blood. In fact, most of his killings and other bad things happened in the 4 years after he escaped. Niers killed 75 people in the 11 years before he was caught. In the 4 years from 1577 to 1581, when he was caught for the second and final time, authorities thought he killed another 569 people. Peter Niers was taken to the Bavarian city of Neumarkt in the Oberpfalz to be put to death in public after he was arrested a second time in 1581. They treated him like he was in the Middle Ages, both physically and figuratively. Even though torture and horrible killings were common at the time, Peter Niers's, which began on September 16, 1581, stood out. Niers went through a terrible 3 days. On the first day, his skin was flayed, and then hot oil was poured on his muscles to remove layers of skin. There was grease on Niers' feet on the second day, and his lower body was slowly cooked over a low fire. On the third day, he was hit so many times on the wheel that his important bones were broken. Lastly, he was killed by being sawed into 4 equal parts while he was still alive. That was the end of this killer. The anti-Semitic Jew. Stella Kubler-Isacson did not kill her victims herself like the other monsters on this list. She instead went after them and gave them to the Nazis, who killed them. She was born Stella Goldschlag and grew up in Berlin as the only child of a middle-class Jewish family that had integrated. Her overprotective parents treated her like a princess. Stella was raised with enough money, but not as much as some of her Jewish schoolmates. That hurt her deeply, and it made her angry at her schoolmates who were wealthier. Stella became well known during World War II for working with the Gestapo to find and report Jews who were hiding from the Nazis. A lot of the people she accused were her old schoolmates and their families. For being richer than Stella's family, she punished them very well. During World War II, Stella Kubler got fake IDs that said she was German Aryan. It worked for a while because she was blonde and had blue eyes. And Jew Catcher, a Jew who works for the Gestapo to find other Jews in hiding, finally told the Gestapo about Stella and her boyfriend. To keep their lives safe, her boyfriend, who would later become her husband, offered to help the Nazis. The Gestapo hired the couple as catchers and paid them 300 Reichsmarks for each Jew they turned in. They also said they would not hurt Stella's parents as long as she kept giving birth. The two knew good places to hide because they had lived in secret themselves. Stella was especially good because she knew a lot of Berlin's Jews from when she went to a separate Jewish school. Stella Kubler didn't choose to become a Jew catcher on her own. She did have some freedom of choice while working as a catcher, but she was completely in charge of how she used it. She chose to use her freedom by chasing hidden Jews with a great deal of zeal. Although Stella's job was done when the Jews she turned in were arrested, she was still happy to help beat, torture, and shame those who had been caught. Even though Stella was very dedicated, the Nazis broke their promises to her and sent her parents to an execution camp to die. In 1943, her husband and his family were sent to Auschwitz. Even so, Stella was still very excited about finding hidden Jews and telling the Gestapo about them. She bet that Germany would win the war and got a promise from a high-ranking Gestapo officer in 1944 that she would be recognized as an Aryan after the war. By the time World War II was over, Stella Kubler had been in charge of arresting, deporting, and killing hundreds of Jews. She killed with cold blood. The number of people she killed was thought to be anywhere from 600 to as many as 3,000. They were made up of many of her close friends, past classmates and their families, and even some of her own family members. Even so, Stella got away with it. They caught her, put her on trial, and gave her a 10-year term. After she got out of jail, she went to West Berlin. There, she was tried by the West German government and given a 10-year sentence. She did not serve any of her time, though. After that, she became a Christian and hated Jews for the rest of her life. Stella Kubler killed herself by jumping out of the window of her Berlin flat in 1994. A royal serial killer. Korean's Crown Prince Sado was the son of King Yongjo and the king's heir. He was never able to receive, and today he is mostly known as a horrible serial killer. He was the king's second son. His first son had died in 1728. This went on for years, and the king's wives and concubines only gave him girls. He gave up hope of ever having a son. When Sado was born in 1735, a lot of people were happy about it. The child was given his own palace and a staff of maids, governesses and workers to take care of him. However, his father didn't do much to help raise or watch over him. So Sado had a great childhood and did whatever he pleased. The few times the king did come, he was very restless and got mad when his son did something as simple as messing up. As a child, Sado went back and forth between being very afraid of his father and wanting to please him very much. Crown Prince Sado had a hard time making his father happy. The king didn't like when people showed love, and Sado's father was more critical than loving when they saw each other. Sado grew up feeling ignored and angry because of this, which made him a killer later on. Sado became a monster because of his problems with his father, his feelings of not being loved, the fact that he wasn't supervised by a father, the fact that courtiers spoiled and praised him, and other deep-seated fears. He had a lot of problems, and his moods would change very quickly and violently. He would one day act with such grace, honor, and honesty that his father would have wanted nothing more in a son and heir. The next, he would change, and he would let his violent attacks happen, during which he would rape and kill people. Historians don't know what exactly was wrong with him, but he was clearly emotionally unstable, and many people today believe he was schizophrenic. Even though drinking was illegal at court, Prince Sado liked to drink huge amounts of wine and spirits. He started drinking way too much. When Sado was feeling down, killing slaves made him feel better. Many days, a lot of dead bodies were taken out of the house. He liked raping court ladies too, and after killing his mistress, he started bothering his own sister. Everyone in the kingdom started to fear him because he was a dangerous psychopath who had raped and killed many women. Unfortunately, Sado's father finally had enough. He decided that he could not, in good faith, make his criminally insane son king of Korea. The crown prince was removed from power on July 4, 1762, when Sado's father called him and hit the floor with a sword as a sign of respect. Because it was against the rules to kill the prince, the king put Sado inside a heavy wooden box that was used to store rice and locked him inside. The ousted prince was left there to die of hunger, and he did so 8 days later. You did not want to accept a dinner invitation from this man. Karl Denke was born in 1860 into a rich farming family near Münsterberg in Silesia, which is now Ziebice, Poland. We only know that he ran away from home when he was 12 years old and became an apprentice to a handyman. As he grew up, he tried his hand at many jobs. After his father died, he used his estate money to buy a piece of land and started farming. Denke wasn't a good farmer though, and working in the fields quickly made him remember why he had run away from home as a child. That's why he sold his land and worked different jobs for a few years. In the end, he bought a small house in Münsterberg and started playing the organ at the church there. He would become one of Germany's scariest serial killers and cannibals, which not many people really thought would happen. Karl Denke became known as a devoted evangelical and was liked and admired by everyone in his community. His friends loved him so much that they called him Vater Denke, which is German for Papa Denke. He was always friendly and willing to help others. People were less likely to believe him after finding out who the real Papa Denke was in 1924. Someone walking by on December the 21st, 1924, heard cries for help coming from Denke's house. As he rushed in, he saw a young man who was bleeding heavily from a head wound and was stumbling in a hallway. Before passing out on the floor, the victim yelled that Papa Denke had hit him with an axe. The police were called, and Denke was taken into custody. A search of his home turned up IDs for 12 guys and male clothing that didn't fit Denke. The kitchen was the part of Karl Denke's house that shocked cops the most. They found 2 big tubs full of meat pickled in brine there. The meat was stuck to bones from people, and by counting the different pieces, detectives thought the Papa Denke had been pickling up to 30 people. Police also found a notebook where Denke had written down the names of many more victims, along with the times of their murders and how heavy their pickled bodies were. The lists went back to 1921. Police never got to question Denke about why he did what he did, because he hung himself in his cell on his first night there with a towel, but proof showed that he ate the people he killed. He also got rid of their meat by giving it to guests as food, putting it in jars and selling it as pickled pork, or giving his neighbors jars of the pickled pork as gifts. The real-life monster behind the fairy tale. One of the people who inspired Bluebeard was Gilles de Montmorency Laval, Baron de Rais, who was also known as Gilles de Rais. He was a nobleman from Brittany. De Rais was a well-liked knight and national hero who became famous as Joan of Arc's captain general and right-hand man. Then his real personality came out, and his famous career and life were cut short when it was found that he was a total monster when he wasn't in the spotlight. The House of Montmorency, which did not belong to de Rais, was one of the oldest, most prestigious and well-known noble families in France. From a very young age, de Rais seemed to live up to the high standards that come with coming from such a famous family. By the time he was 15, he had made a name for himself in battle during a series of wars over who would rule the Duchy of Brittany. He stood out even more in Anjou, where he fought against the English in 1427 for the Duchess of Anjou. Even though he was young, Gilles de Rais was one of France's most famous soldiers when Joan of Arc rose up against the English in 1429. It was his job to watch over the Maid of Orléans, and he fought with her in several fights. The lifting of the English siege of Orléans, which was de Rais's biggest win, made him stand out. Then he went with her to Reims to see King Charles VII crowned. During the ceremony, King Charles VII made Gilles de Rais Marshal of France, a title given to generals who have done exceptionally well. De Rais got large estates from both his father and his maternal grandpa. As a result of marrying a wealthy daughter, he gained even more land and became one of France's richest men. After leaving the army in 1434, it became clear that he wasn't very good at managing money. Instead, he was better at leading men into fight. De Rais quickly lost all of his huge wealth by living a lavish life that was on par with the king's. Within a year of retiring, de Rais lost most of his lands, and his family got the king to say that he couldn't mortgage what was left. De Rais turned to alchemy to try to find a way to turn metals into gold so that he could get more money. He also became a Satanist and tried to call on the devil to get knowledge, power, and money. He also did things like rape, abuse, and killing children over and over again. In 1440, de Rais, who was becoming more and more unstable, got into a fight with local church leaders. Things got worse until he kidnapped a priest. That led to an investigation into Gilles by the church, which turned up some horrible things. It turned out that the once famous national hero had been killing hundreds of kids, mostly boys, but sometimes girls as well. The killer, Gilles de Rais, would use gifts like candy, toys, or clothes to get kids from poor or peasant families to come to his house. He would put them at ease first by feeding and taking care of them, then lead them to a bedroom. There, de Rais and his helpers would grab their prey. In his later trial, de Rais admitted that he got a sick thrill from seeing the kids' fear as he told them what was going to happen. Things that were going to happen were not good. Let's just say that it included torture and sodomy and finished with the child's death, which was usually done by cutting off its head. The burnt bodies and clothes were then put in the oven, and the ashes were dumped in a moat. In the end, de Rais and the other people who helped him were all sentenced to death. On October the 26th, 1440, he was put to death by both burning and hanging. His bad reputation led to the fairy tale Bluebeard, which is about a rich man who kills his wives one by one. Ancient China's serial killing royal. In ancient China, Prince Liu Pengli was a member of the Han dynasty, which was in charge. Not only that, but he was the first serial killer known to history. Emperor Jing, who was Liu Pengli's cousin, made him king of Jidong and the area around it in 144 BC. What bad news for the good people of Jidong. Pengli would be in charge of them for the next 23 years. Pengli was a killer who preyed on his victims and killed them for fun. He probably would have liked the character Ramsay Bolton from Game of Thrones because Pengli liked hunting people for fun, just like that made-up character. Pengli killed at least 100 people for fun, and the real number of people he killed was possibly higher. For more than 20 years, he ruled with psychotic fear, and people were too scared to leave their homes at night. One of Pengli's victims finally got the nerve to go to the imperial capital and report to the emperor. That was the end of it. For most of history, fairness has been a myth and hasn't always been fair, which is why Prince Pengli got away with it. He wasn't killed. Instead, he was demoted and sent away. Based on what Han scholar Sima Qian wrote, Liu Pengli was arrogant and cruel and paid no attention to the etiquette demanded between ruler and subject. In the evenings, he used to go out on marauding expeditions with 20 or 30 slaves or young men who were in hiding from the law, murdering people and seizing their belongings for sheer sport. When the affair came to light, it was found he had murdered at least 100 or more persons. Everyone in the kingdom knew about his ways, so that the people were afraid to venture out of their houses at night. The son of one of his victims finally sent a report to the Han Emperor, and the Han officials requested that he be executed. The emperor could not bear to carry out their recommendation, but made him a commoner and banished him to Shangyong.